welcome everyone to Renegade Conversations. My name is Meryl Cook, and I'm an artist, a renegade, and the host and creator of Renegade Conversations. My mission is to provide thought-provoking, fearless, and fun discussions with remarkable female rebels who are shaking things up in their respective fields. And my hope is that it will make you question the norms and ignite your own renegade spirit. So this episode is sponsored by Jen Salab-Huber. Dr. Huber is a naturopathic doctor, registered dietitian, and intuitive eating counselor, and she's on a mission to help women manage menopause without diets and food rules. She helps women navigate the physical and emotional changes that happen in perimenopause and menopause, including their search for food freedom and body confidence. Working from a health at every size approach, she teaches women to become intuitive eaters and build body confidence at every stage of midlife. In addition to her one-to-one and group programs, she's the host of the Midlife Feast podcast and community that helps women undiet their lives after 40 so they can nourish a relationship with food that helps them discover the magic of midlife. And you'll be hearing more from Dr. Salab-Huber a little bit later. So I first heard about our next guest from my running partner, Etta Moffat. Etta and her husband, Grant Murray, are both graphic designers. And Etta mentioned several times during our runs, you've got to meet this amazing woman, Stephanie Stobbe. She is the mover and shaker behind the Freedom Project, a traveling exhibit that Grant had the privilege of working on for its debut in Halifax recently. She is determined, interesting, and a real powerhouse. I was hooked. Grant sent an email introducing me and Stephanie, and here we are. So welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me here today.
It's really my pleasure. It's so lovely to meet you. So I'm going to read you a little bit about Stephanie from her bio. So Stephanie Phetsamay Stobbe is an associate professor in conflict resolution studies, a program of Canadian Mennonite University located at the University of Winnipeg and in the Redekop School of Business. Dr. Stobbe is a leading expert on Southeast Asian dispute resolution processes and has conducted conflict resolution and peacebuilding workshops around the world, including in Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand, with political leaders, NGOs, and civil societies. Stephanie has been invited to work with local citizens to develop the first conflict resolution and peacebuilding program in Laos, and to conduct research on traditional mediation processes and conflict resolution rituals. She has also co-facilitated a series of seminars and workshops for political leaders, NGOs, and civil society in Myanmar, which is Burma, on institutional designs in conflict resolution, peacebuilding, and reconciliation. She's been invited to work with the Thai Ministry of Justice, directors and staff on cross-cultural conflict resolution, mediation, and community justice programs. Her current research includes oral histories of Southeast Asian refugees and European and international policies on refugees and forced migrants. Stephanie is Lexington Publishing Editor for Conflict Resolution and Peacebuilding in Asia. A noted author, she has published books with Emerald Publishing, Routledge, and Lexington Books. Stephanie served as an expert advisory board member for Asia Pacific Refugee Studies at Auckland University and is currently the president of the Canadian Association for Refugee and Forced Migration Studies. Stephanie is the curator of the Hearts of Freedom, Stories of Southeast Asian Refugees Museum exhibition that is traveling across Canada. And that's your backdrop, Stephanie, and the exhibit is currently in Halifax at Pier 21. So welcome, Stephanie. Tell me, what does being a renegade mean to you?
I think that's an interesting question. I don't think I ever thought of myself as a renegade before this conversation. And when I think of a renegade, I often think of someone like Nellie McClung, who was instrumental in helping women get the right to vote in Alberta and Manitoba, or Katherine Johnson, who was an African-American mathematician who worked at NASA And so those are some of the people that I often think of when I think about renegades, but they don't
Mhm.
have to be anyone famous. I think
Mhm.
a renegade is someone who is strong, independent, and determined, someone who is not a bystander. And I think when I think of a renegade, I often think of my own mother. I would consider her a renegade.
I was hoping you would mention your mother. She seems to have a fascinating story. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your mom?
Yes, I consider her to be someone who is a big role model for me. She is very strong, courageous, resilient person, and she managed to help the family escape from Laos to
Mhm.
Thailand. And she had three children under the age of 5, and she was 6 months pregnant at that time. And
Mhm.
so she managed to do all of this, and she had the foresight to plan the journey,
Mhm.
and had the courage and strength to start agriculture business in order to help the family survive.
Mhm.
And she managed to do all of this, with I guess my brother was born then in Thailand and with 4 young children.
Uh-huh.
And so I think she is someone who is very courageous and has a lot of strength.
Lovely. And I think that's a picture of you and your mom right behind you, behind your shoulder there, of her at your graduation for your PhD, correct?
Yes, it is. This was a photo that Grant chose for the exhibition. He said, "I love this photo. It's
Uh-huh.
very colorful, and it shows, the integration aspect of coming to Canada." And at
Yes.
my PhD graduation, my mother was very proud. I'm
I
the
bet.
first person in the family who received a PhD. So
Mm.
she's very, very happy about that. And she is someone who always encouraged her children to get an
Mhm.
education. And that was
Mm.
something that was very, very important to her. And so she encouraged us throughout our elementary school and high school years
Mhm.
to continue with our education and go to college or university.
Mhm. That's wonderful. Wonderful. And um, so you didn't always consider yourself a renegade, but now you do a little bit. So tell me about the renegade parts of you.
Yeah, I think, when I think of what you're using as this term renegade, and I can see myself maybe fitting into that a little bit more, because I am someone who is determined. I'm someone who is independent, and my husband
Mhm.
would say I'm stubborn enough to be considered a renegade. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I've always had it, in me in terms of being focused, being determined, and getting things done, and
Mhm.
making sure that I have this dedication and persistence and hard work, which has always been a part of my life growing up.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I continue to have these different characteristics or qualities that I'm using in my own work now.
Yeah. And have any of those presented challenges to you, those qualities? And what kind of opportunities and challenges have they presented for you?
I think in terms of opportunities, I've had an opportunity to work with many different political leaders, NGOs, civil societies,
Mhm.
community groups across
Mhm.
Canada and around the world, looking at conflict resolution, mediation, and peace building. And so that has been really exciting. And, for example, we were invited, or I was one of the team members who were invited to go to Myanmar when the
Mhm.
government was transitioning to a democracy. And that was
Mhm.
really exciting to be able to sit down
Mhm.
with all of these different people, leaders, and different civil society members, and sit down and talk about what peace could look like, and what
Mm.
we needed to do in order to move towards peace. And so that was a really, really exciting time. Unfortunately, as that is no longer the case. And but I've had the opportunity to work with many, many different groups, and so that's something I think comes as a result of my own determination, my own interest in the topics of social justice and peace.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
I think this comes from my own background as a former refugee, having experienced the war, conflict,
Mhm.
violence, displacement, having to resettle
Yes.
in Canada and start a new life. I think all of those have influenced the kinds of work that I tend to gravitate towards in
Mhm.
terms of doing conflict resolution and
Mhm.
peace building. And so I've had, many opportunities to work with some great people, including different projects such as the Hearts of Freedom project. And so this has allowed me to really connect to the communities that we're working with and to really find out their stories and experiences and to be able to document it in various
Mm.
ways. And one of the ways is creating this museum exhibition.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And have there been any challenges?
Yeah, I think, there can be challenges as well, being someone who is determined or who has goals. I need to always remind myself that there are people with different needs and different perspectives, and to make sure that I'm including some of their goals and their needs as well, and that can
Mm.
be
Mhm.
challenging. Or sometimes I think, being a woman and a woman who comes from an ethnic minority group and who was a former
Mhm.
refugee, it comes with a lot of baggage sometimes. And
Mhm.
sometimes we hear in the media or in the community, well, you should just be grateful,
Mm.
to be here in Canada. And when I talk to my family and to other refugees, they are grateful and they're thankful to be able to come to Canada. And
Mhm.
but they are also giving very much to the communities and to
Mhm.
Canada and to communities around the world, and so they're giving back many folds. And so yes, we're thankful and we're grateful, but also to have people recognize that we are making great contributions here in our
Mhm.
communities in Canada and around the world.
I think that's something that really struck me when I visited the Hearts of Freedom project yesterday was reading not just about the stories of how people came, because that's what we often hear, right? That's all we hear, but the contributions that people are making and kind of the stories of each of the families who, how they had contributed to becoming Canadians and what they've done in our community. It was really inspiring. I loved that part of the project.
The main goals of this project is to highlight
Mhm.
the positive stories of refugees, positive
Mhm.
stories of integration, and
Mhm.
how they are contributing to their
Mhm.
communities to help dispel some of the negative stories that we're hearing
Mhm. Mhm.
today in terms of refugees and immigrants. And so
Mhm.
this was something that we really wanted to do in our project and in the
Mhm.
exhibition itself, to
Mhm.
highlight those stories, but also to talk about some of the struggles and obstacles that people faced
Mhm.
as well when they come to a new
Mhm.
country, not knowing the language
Right.
and
Yeah.
culture and some of the struggles that they have and how they were able to overcome those struggles, I think are important to share as well.
I think so. I think it's an absolutely wonderful project. And was it an easy project to get off the ground, or was that something that you had to really be determined about as well?
Yeah, so the exhibition part of it came from the original Hearts of Freedom project,
Mhm.
which was started in 2018 when we conducted interviews, but it started earlier than this in 2015 when
Mhm.
the Vietnamese community came to the academics and asked if we can assist them in documenting their history and their stories.
Mhm.
And then
Right.
Laotian and Cambodian communities became involved as well. And then in
Mhm.
2018, we were able to get funding from Heritage Canada, and we were able to begin our oral history interviews of
Mhm.
former refugees across
Mhm.
Canada, from Vancouver all
Mhm.
the way to Halifax.
Right.
And the original outcomes from that project was to write a book based on the stories of the former refugees,
Mhm.
to create a documentary film,
Yeah.
to create a school curriculum, an
Mhm.
academic
Mhm.
curriculum on this topic,
Cool.
and to
Yeah.
create a website. And so we have a
Mhm.
heartsoffreedom.org website
Yeah.
where you can find a lot of this information and the interviews themselves. And so those were the original outcomes that were planned as part of that project. And then I was attending one of our management meetings, and we were just talking, and all of a sudden I thought, wouldn't it be great if we can create a museum exhibition on these stories and travel it across Canada through the 10 cities where we conducted interviews. And I believe Emily Burton, who's at the Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21, was at that meeting at the time.
Oh, great.
And so I said, let's see if we can get some people together and a committee together. So I put together a committee that included myself, Emily Burton from Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21, Laura Sankini from the Canadian Museum of History. And so we got together to discuss, what are some possibilities, and to brainstorm and to dream about what this exhibition could look like. And after that, we invited community members from the 3 ethnic communities to join us to make sure that they have a voice and can assist us in terms of looking at this exhibition. And so that's how it started. And so that would have been about 2021. And when we got the committee together, and then I had to go and look for funding, because we didn't have funding for the exhibition part of the project, because this was something new, something that was added to the original project. And so I managed to get some private funding, and then I applied for SSHRC, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, and was able to get a grant from them to tour the exhibition across Canada. So so that's how
a long process, but you really were determined to get it happening. Yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely. So we're going to take a short break in a moment, but before we break, I have a question that I want you to think about, Stephanie, while we're having a break. And that is, in grade 5, what kind of kid were you?
Hi there, knock knock. It's Jen Salib Huber. I'm the host of the Midlife Feast podcast and community. My apologies for interrupting this renegade conversation with Meryl. But if you're like me and you like conversations that disrupt the status quo in midlife, I wanted to invite you to join my community, the Midlife Feast community, where we're disrupting diet culture and learning to manage menopause without diets and food rules. If you'd like to join us, use the code Renegade and save 20% off your first month. Now back to this Renegade conversation.
So thanks for taking a break and coming back. Stephanie, in grade 5, what type of kid were you? Tell me about yourself in grade 5.
In grade 5, I think I was, a very happy kid, a kid who was very interested in learning and making sure that I did well in school. And grade 5 was a very special year, because that was the year when I was able to skip half of grade 5 and go into grade 6. And and so I managed to do grade 5 and 6 in 1 year. And so I was, someone who was keen to learn. And I remember when I started grade 2 in Canada, I did not speak any English. And so that was very challenging. I also come from a very different cultural background. And so there were some obstacles there as well. But I was very determined that I was going to learn English and to excel in it. And I remember, I think maybe when I was about 10 years old, reading documents and interpreting documents for my parents, because as children, you learn the language much more quickly than your parents. And so my parents would have been in their late 20s when they first came to Canada. And to be able to read these documents, for my parents was something that I recall doing. And I think this isn't unique. I think in many refugee and immigrant families, children grow up very quickly, right, in terms of having to do some of these things, such as translating for parents. And so I think it's probably a common story for many immigrants.
I think so. I think that's true. And so your family escaped from Laos. At what age were you at that time?
I think when we escaped from Laos, I was 4 years old.
4. And I heard a story that you might want to tell us about crossing the river and how that was for you. Do you mind telling us about that? I think it's really speaks to your character and to your mother's character. as well.
Yeah, I think on the day that my parents planned to leave Laos, we had gone to visit my grandparents up the river along the Mekong River. And they didn't tell anyone that they were planning on leaving. And so at the bank of the river, just as we were saying goodbye to our grandparents, our parents told them that we are actually not going back home, but that we are going across to Thailand to seek asylum there.
Mhm.
And so as we were making our way across the Mekong River, there were soldiers on both sides of the river, and the Lao soldiers were told to shoot anyone trying to leave the country, and the Thai
Mhm.
soldiers were told to shoot and kill anyone trying to enter Thailand because they didn't want any refugees there. So that
Mhm.
was very dangerous. And we started making our way across the Mekong River in a little canoe. And
Wow.
then our boat hit a whirlpool and it
Mhm.
started spinning us around and around and around. And as I said earlier, my mother was 6 months pregnant, and there were three young children in the
Oh my.
boat. I think my sister was 1 year old, and my older sister was 5. And
Mm.
water started filling up in our canoe. And I remember my older sister and I scooping water out of the boat, right, to make sure that the boat didn't fill up.
Oh my.
My parents frantically trying to
Mm.
paddle through and get us through the whirlpool and across to Thailand. And so that was, one of the memories that I vividly remember, just because we were very scared, and our parents were very worried because the children didn't know how to swim. And
Oh
so
my goodness.
capsized, the children would have likely drowned. And so that was very, very scary for our family. And that was one of, the first memories that I have of us trying to cross the Mekong River to go to Thailand. And there were also big boulders, right, that often jut out of the waters. And
Mhm.
there are no buoys or signs to warn you of these boulders. And so it was quite dangerous. And we have
Uh-huh.
heard stories of many people who had drowned in the Mekong River
Yes.
trying to
Oh,
escape.
that's just incredible. And I'm so glad that your family survived, but others didn't. And what a way to start. That's a huge, must have had a huge impact on you going forward.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
experience, is something that I remember. And when I hear stories of other boat people in the more current situations, whether it's the Syrians trying to cross the Mediterranean
Mhm.
Sea, or the Rohingyas, right, trying to cross.
Right.
And so these images of people in boats really resonate with me, just because of my own experience. Even though we were in a smaller canoe, I
Mhm.
can imagine some of the people who are trying to escape and trying to find safety, and what they're
Mhm.
experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really huge. So something very serious to something a little less serious. So what are you drinking today, Stephanie?
So today, I don't know if you can see, this is a coconut, young coconut. And inside the young coconut, I have a straw here. And inside the young coconut is the coconut water. And this
Oh,
is
nice.
that I drink a lot here. And I find it very refreshing. It's a little bit sweet, but it's very refreshing. And it's something that I drank when I was living in Laos and Thailand, where we would just, go to a coconut tree, take
Uh-huh.
down the green coconut, and
Yeah.
chop off the top part of the coconut, and give us a straw, and that's how we would drink the water from the coconut. And so I
That's
brought some
wonderful.
today.
Nice, nice. It's very refreshing. I've had them as well. I'll put that on the show notes so that people have a little bit of a recipe of how to do coconut water like that. Thanks for sharing that. Um, Now I just have two questions left, and the first one is there a line or shape that would define you? So it's one of the questions that I use when I'm teaching my workshops. It just helps people to think outside the box, and I've received some very interesting answers. So if you were to think of a line or shape that would define you, what would that look like?
Yeah, I was thinking of the infinity sign, the
Mhm.
eight that is sideways, And I like that symbol because it is connected to the idea of creating unity and
Uh-huh.
the idea of bringing balance between opposites. And so, being in the field of conflict resolution, I'm often asked to be a
Right.
mediator. And as a
Yeah. Yes.
mediator, I have to bring two sides, two opposing sides together and try to encourage unity as well as how can we create balance between these two different perspectives? How can
Mm.
I help the parties in conflict find a resolution that is
Mhm.
satisfying to both of them? And so when
Mm.
I think of the symbol, of the infinity symbol, just because it has that connection to
Uh-huh.
unity and to balance between opposites.
That's wonderful. I've never heard anyone say that before. So that's really wonderful. And my last question, Stephanie, is what advice do you have for women who want to access more of their own inner wild selves or their renegade selves? What advice would you have?
Yeah, I think that with everything in life, as I mentioned earlier, hard work, dedication, persistence, being respectful to yourself and to others, and most of all, practicing these things over and over again so that we can
Mhm.
create positive changes. And
Mhm.
I think being a renegade, we often think about us being independent and being determined, but it's also about working together with other people. So if we can bring other
Mhm.
people into creating goals and ideas and
Mhm.
projects, and if we
Mhm.
are able to work on it together, I think that we become stronger and we can
Mhm.
definitely move towards positive changes. And so I think that's really important. Yes, independence is important,
Mhm.
determination, but also
Mhm.
how can we bring these things together and work
Mhm.
together as
Yeah.
as a group, as a community, in order to make these changes.
I love that aspect of working together. I think that it's finding allies and because we really are stronger when we have a community that's working together. So
Yeah, I was just going to add that I believe that refugees are renegades as well. Many of the refugees are forced to making difficult decisions, either to suppress their beliefs and fall in line with those who are in power, or they can be tortured or killed if they don't follow the leaders. And
Mhm.
so many of them will choose to flee oppression
Mhm.
and die trying. And so
Mhm.
I see these refugees as being very courageous, as being very resilient, and they
Mhm.
have a lot of strength and courage. And I can see this in my own mother, who is very resilient and courageous in terms of helping her family escape, making sure that we had enough food to eat in the refugee camps. And when we
Mhm.
came to Canada, to really support the children in terms of encouraging them to get an education and making sure that they have the opportunities to become successful here in
Mhm.
Canada.
Yeah, so refugees are almost the ultimate renegade, aren't they? That's great. Thank you so much. Um, I wanted to thank you very much, Stephanie, and it was lovely to meet you. Thank you for making time to have conversation with me. It's been such a pleasure. I wanted to thank our sponsor, Dr. Jen Salib-Huber, the menopause nutritionist. And I hope that this episode has left you feeling inspired and ready to channel your own renegade spirit. If you need a little help getting started, please reach out to me. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more renegade conversations. And I will also put the links to the Hearts of Freedom project as well as Stephanie's coconut water in the show notes. So be sure to check those out. So thanks again.